and welcome to another edition of everyone's favorite podcast, everyone's favorite radio show. It's the Larry Conley Radio Show, although now I don't think anybody knows what a radio is in the sense that we used to have radio. Now everything is a podcast. So we're going to change the name. We're going to rebrand. It's the Larry Conley Podcast, and we got all kinds of facts and fun. And ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, here he is, our fearless leader. He's looking more and more like a grandpa every day. Look at the gray on his. The Grecian formula is sorely needed. Ladies and gentlemen, your fearless leader, Chocolate Thunder himself, Deputy Chief for Training, retired Larry Conley.
Right. Thank you, David, and welcome back. Got my partner in crime, David, back. We've had to do a couple of shows without David due to scheduling conflicts and stuff. And then a lot of times, David, people say we look alike. And so I had to grow some hair to kind of get that separation in. But I actually was trying something new with this retirement hair, see how it looks. So they're kind of grooming. I never did grow a beard before because it always looked funny. It's like
right,
I didn't have enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I didn't. Patches. They were gonna call me patches. Patches of hair all over my face, but it's kind of coming in a little bit. So I'm working on it. And every time that the lawn people come out and do my lawn, I tell them to throw a little bit of that in my face so it can grow
there
too.
There it is. Trying to get you.
But it's
just miracle growing in there. Absolutely.
And around Christmas time, Dave, I'm thinking about getting some of that chia pet stuff and put on.
There it is. Yeah.
See what happens.
To be honest, I thought you were fertilizing me with all that shit you're talking, but hey, that's just that was my mistake. You go ahead. Tell me.
Right, but like if you're gonna get called Paw by the grandkids, you want to kind of look like Paw, looking like baby face for a minute. So anyway, I said, let me try something new. I'm not sure am I gonna totally keep it, but I did want to try something new, and I thought it was going to be a repellent, but I'm going to tell you, the ladies like the beard there. They're like, hey, I mean, I think
they got a whole Silver Fox Club.
Yeah, there's a whole Silver Fox network. I mean, I think
gaining momentum more every day.
Yeah, game recognized game. What the fans
I was going to say, is this before or after the bingo game? Because this I can see this going over really well with Shady Pines.
All your new friends you're making. Yeah. I was like, man, I thought this was going to be repellent. I'm getting doors open by young people and ladies with daddy issues.
Get that door for you, Papa.
Yeah.
Like, you old enough to be my dad. I said, but I'm not. So.
Right.
But. Anyway, just trying something new and we're trying to rebrand some things. And like I said, the good thing about hair, if you don't like it, you can always shave it off.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. And then since I drive the Corvette, it adds to that flair. And all I need now is to give me some stocking light socks to come below my knees and some New Balance shoes.
There it is. You're good.
The kid is going to be complete.
Get the little calf garters going on.
Yeah. Right. And a knee brace. It's going to be on. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm embracing it.
No, it's them Nike Air Monarchs. That's what you win with.
Right.
Once you cross that threshold, them Nike Air Monarchs, that show that you have elevated to that
that
to grandpa stat.
Yeah, put some arch supports in them bad boys. They're good to go, Another thing I'm checking out too is that these guys wearing these hats now with the brims, and then they got these matching short sets for the cookout. They got this long button-up shirt with the matching short. They got some pleats in it. Man, don't sleep on it. Don't sleep on it. Come in one big plastic bag.
Slowly but surely, cleats are making their way back.
Yeah, I'm saying. Don't
that's
sleep
when you have.
You can come back and take away from that tight Euro look.
I think you can get them on sale at the Watch Out There Now store.
The swap meet. Yes. The swap meet. So, yeah. So anyway, growing, I'm embrace growing up. I mean, people try to fight it, putting age and stuff on, Grecian formula, trying to look younger. But man, just embrace it, lean into it. Yeah, I was down when I was young, down in middle age. I'm trying to embrace it all and just look good at all age. So if we can just embrace it at all ages, then let's do that. Today we've labeled this one.
Extra mayonnaise on that St. Paul, if you please.
Yeah. Cal is in town trying to order some St. Louis stuff. So
listen, we getting on a plane in 2 days. I'm under the gun right now to make a lot of stuff happen.
Trying to get the White Castle and trying to get the Emo's pizza and
we got the White Castle last night.
And I don't know why you trying to get Chinese food out there. It ain't gonna taste.
Hey! Don't come out here talking trash.
I figured I'd give it a chance because he didn't.
Old boy up the hill from us. He came from Normandy, so.
Oh, that don't count either. Any county rice is immediately suspect.
Yeah, no. You gotta go
he was right on the city border.
You gotta go Martin Luther King Boulevard, brother, and Belt.
You know better because all of that rice we used to go get from work wasn't hitting.
You know what?
If the cook's last name is Aroni,
not on MLK and not on Union.
Yeah, especially
right. Well, none of that no good no more.
But what's good? Actually, Year of the Dragon over there on Natural Bridge. That's in Normandy, right? And Year of the Dragon has always been fire.
So to our national,
the chef talking about the dragon is Aroni instead of some Asians. You're in trouble.
But our national listeners. Our national listeners, you probably wonder, like, what does all these names mean? What does Chinese food mean? What is it? Keep in mind, guys, that we ain't just talking to St. Louis people. They don't know what you're talking about. So, keep that in mind with the banter, But, however, Cal, and we'll get into what he does in a minute. Cal is in town from all over the world. I mean, you never know where he's flying in from. He lives all over the world. Man of the world, and he's in St. Louis. And of course, when you go back to your hometown, you like to get stuff that's germane to your hometown. So Kyle only has 2 days. He's here with his brother, and he's trying to take advantage of all the stuff that we know St. Louis, and especially growing up in North St. Louis. And David and I and Kyle and Galen are going to talk about this on this little episode we like to call Faith, Family, and Firefighting. And with Faith, Family, and Firefighting, the whole point of this is to kind of have fun with some brothers that we grew up in the same neighborhood, but didn't necessarily grow up with each other, but accidentally ran into each other through our travels and through our careers, only to find out that we, grew up in the same neighborhood, blocks from each other. David and Kyle were both, Kyle is still in the Army, but David was in the Army, and Galen and I worked on the St. Louis Fire Department for years. And so we found out, and then Galen and I were blessed enough to run these north side streets and west side streets within the neighborhood that we grew up in with our firehouse. So a lot of times we knew how to get to places where people were like, I'm going this way. Like, no, you don't want to go that way. We know a better way to get there, a faster way to beat the other people in. So that being said, I thought with these similarities that, and then we grew up with primarily single parent homes, both our mothers holding it down and instilling and navigating us through a lot of the ills of our neighborhoods. And so for us to get through all of that, for us to have the faith to still keep doing what we do, for us to raise award-winning children, for us to still have our faith intact, for us to still be productive citizens contributing, whether it's locally, like Galen and I do primarily, and around the world like Kyle does, and actually as David does, doing it as a filmmaker and all. Our tentacles are not just rooted here in the St. Louis area, but they reach all over the place. And for us to come from that background and are able to impact communities beyond where we grew up and not just be stuck in that paradigm. I thought it was something to talk about and celebrate. And especially since David and I are big on personal leadership, it took a lot of personal leadership for us to break out of where we were rooted and not had that balance, not forget where we were grounded, but also knowing how to rise above some things that could have kept us. Because, and Galen and I can testify to this, and David don't know this personally. Galen, I know, and probably Kyle knows that we ran into some people running the streets at Truck 13 that was still there, when we were growing up, and they're still there. And we've had to even help them sometime in their families, and they just got stuck in that neighborhood. And there's nothing wrong with being stuck in the neighborhood. You're still being a productive contributor to the neighborhood, but they weren't being productive in that. So that was kind of not easy to see. I saw some people I knew, Galen seen some people you've known. And so it just gives you a perspective of how blessed we are overall. So welcome back. In this episode, we're going to have 4 brothers that come from the streets, and these streets in North St. Louis or in Northwest St. Louis, because we moved around a little bit. We moved out west too. Dave, remember we moved on Enright, and we grew up on Maple, grew up on Enright, and grew up on, we've been out on Hamilton, out by Job Corps. That's about as west as you can get, where you hit Jennings, so so we know that area well. But we just want to reflect and see how we made it out, and what keeps us grounded. So what you got to say about that, David?
No, I mean, everything, I think you kind of summed up everything really well. It was a lot of things that I look back on and think back on, and it's just like there are people that I know or knew who, didn't make it out. And I don't mean in the sense that they're still there. They're not really still anywhere. And some of them made it out, but didn't get to make it to somewhere that they wanted to go. And so, to be able to get anywhere and make any kind of impact, even if you still maintain residence in the neighborhood, but you're still making a positive impact. I think that's the goal and the place, you kind of want to be. So I think it's a blessing that, we are 4 brothers who have been able to, achieve that. And then, as we were talking about with having kids, now producing folks who will go into the future and do some greater things too. That's quite an accomplishment. So it is a good idea to get, some folks on the line and say, hey, let's kind of talk about where we were, where we are, and where we're going, and would like to see things going, particularly through the lens of personal leadership. So.
Yeah, we're going to discuss some purpose, pain, and perseverance, and see why we believe in serving a cause bigger than ourselves. One thing I wanted to bring up before I forget too is that not only that we quote unquote made it out, and I don't want to make that like a Lifetime movie or something, but we also are all mentors in our own right too. And so before I get deep into some of the stuff, some notes I took that I wanted to cover, I think that's important too. I really want to get into that a little bit as we get started, because I'll forget it going out, because I'm getting that grade.
Right.
But I want to get into that mentorship. And I think when I think about it, all of us on this podcast have done some mentorship in some regard that makes things around us better. And so I want to start out with, I don't know, I know Kyle, I can guarantee you this, and I'm taking a chance, but I pretty much guarantee I'm right about it. Kyle is a chaplain, and being a chaplain, I'm sure you want well, I'm gonna give you all this guidance, but if you need a mentor, I'm not your guy. I'm not doing that. I don't do mentoring. I'm sure that was part of the chaplain oath, and I will mentor as well. So I wanted to we got the Conley brothers and the Taylor brothers, and I want Kyle and Galen to try to talk about their mentors and people they have mentored, and why do they think that that's important? And then we'll talk to David Conley, because I know, being the karate sensei master that David has been, he's not only mentored in that regard, but mentored in his profession as a filmmaker and producer in that regard. So let's kick it off with the Taylors, and let's talk about not only you making it out, but why it's important to mentor. Why is mentorship important?
You want to start?
Go ahead.
So, mentorship, I think, is important when you come from a situation where you don't have what right looks like, to use an Army term, kind of modeled before you. And a lot of your influences actually come from, it's sad to say, but come from television. You grow up with an idea of what kind of husband, what kind of father you want to be one day, and the examples that you actually have to pull from are on TV. And so when you see something like, the epic fall and collapse of Bill Cosby, who was the most beloved man in America because of what role he played on TV and how far removed that looks like from the man's actual life, you know what I mean? You realize we kind of get sold a bill of goods. So since, what we see on TV and what we see in social media is oftentimes removed from real life, to have an opportunity to touch in a tangible way, to know in a personal way somebody who has achieved or who is achieving, or, who has overcome some of the same challenges and obstacles you're dealing with in your life, is essential, to help you finding that path. You got to see somebody who's done it, to know that it can be done. I mean, otherwise it's just like a hope and a wish. But to be able to sit down and talk to somebody about, okay, this is where you are. This is where I was. This is where you want to be. This is where I wanted to be. And this is how I navigated from here to here. And your path might not be exactly the same. You know what I mean? But it's a way to begin to think differently about how to get where I'm trying to go. Because otherwise you limited by what you know. Mm-hmm. And what you know is actually limited to your environment, your experiences, your exposure, and the examples you actually have around you. And when you don't really have people around you who have done or are doing the things that, like the big ideas that you have for life, you got to figure out how to take a hope and a wish and make it something that's a tangible plan to get you from here to there. Mm-hmm. And in the absence of actually having that, I guess we would probably say so it started out with me and Galen, and we wouldn't have probably looked at them like examples, but to show us a better life than what we were exposed to every day. For us, it started out in the Boy Scouts, and it started out for Galen in the Cub Scouts. And we kind of got cracked on for that, because we don't really be in that space, you know what I mean? But we kind of discovered we like being out in the woods and making stuff and discovering how to survive out there in a different environment than the environment where, you just learning to live and survive, based on where you're growing up or whatever. So learning how to kind of get taken out of your natural element and you put in a place where you got to learn to be resourceful. And these guys, again, they don't necessarily know that they're being mentors. But one of the things we had an opportunity to see that kind of first informed it for us was the Scoutmaster. His sons were actually in the troop too. So as much as we were learning about, field craft, and, scout principles and everything, the more important example for me was watching the way this father interacted with his sons. I watched the way them boys loved their father. I watched the way that father loved on them sons. And it kind of creates a longing for you, because in your mind, you just know that's the way things are supposed to be. Even though that's like not what your reality is, you just know that that's the way things are actually supposed to be. So sometimes we have direct mentors. Sometimes we have these indirect mentors that we kind of look at somebody's example, who live in a life, or, who have achieved something or achieving something that, we hope to achieve one day. And you begin to kind of emulate their pattern and their practice. I guess I can't think of a better way to say it, because it ain't often like you see on TV where somebody sits you down on their knee and they give you game like that, right? It's not really how it happens in real life. Usually in real life, it becomes as somebody who's in your circle that you observe and you watch. You know what I mean? You ask questions and you begin to think about the information they give you, and you find a way to reconcile it with your reality. And that might work for me, but that might not work for me. I can see how I could do this, but that other part, that don't really fit, and that won't work where we are. And you just kind of figure out a way to kind of navigate your way forward. And then you take that plan and you begin to kind of reach back and you pull other people along that path, because you've actually kind of got a better sense of how to get there. But every day it's like hands-on training. You figuring this out as you go along. So you never really feel as if you've arrived. I had a young man ask me about if I consider myself successful. And I told him, no, I don't consider myself successful, but I do think I'm succeeding, because I'm only as good as what I've done to today. I could fall off a cliff tomorrow and the bottom fall out of all of this. So I wouldn't consider myself successful, but I do think I'm succeeding. And I'm succeeding, I think, because I found something that works. And that's what I try to help them find as well. Something that works. It might not work just like it worked for me, but we can figure out how it's going to work for them. I'm going to throw it to you. Talk too much.
No, you don't talk too much. I'm good. This is probably my current longest standing mentor right here sitting next to me. And I can't be more appreciative for everything that I've learned from him, whether he was trying to teach it to me or not, or whether I just observed it. Unfortunately, like you mentioned, with a lot of people, we grew up, with a whole block. When we lived in Richmond Heights in the county, our whole family lived on one block, and we were all being raised by our mothers.
It was a completely matriarchal community. There wasn't a man around. We were all being raised by our mothers.
There were 5 houses in a row on our block, and every house was a branch of my grandma's daughters. She had 5 daughters. All 5 daughters lived in a house next to each other, and they were all, and then they were all raising their kids on this block, single women. So none of us grew up with a dad or like a father figure to emulate. So it was kind of us leaning on older cousins, and now me, my older brother. I mean, luckily, I know a lot of people have a problem with women raising men these days. And thankfully we had strong women, because like you said, I agree with Kyle. I wouldn't call myself a success as of yet, but I do feel like I am succeeding, and I feel like I owe that to my mom, my grandma, my oldest cousin, Monica, and of course now my brother, and you guys as well, actually. But our mom and our grandma were very strong, and aunts. And I feel like I owe everything to them. It's important to me to be a mentor. Like a lot of people ask me, like I'm sure you too, Chief, why did you grow up over here and you still choose to work in this neighborhood as run down as it is? And that's important to me, because when I lived over there, I didn't see people like me getting off that truck. I didn't see people like me riding past, waving to a little kid like me. So it was important to me to change that narrative. Like you said, at one time we had a pretty good crew to represent the neighborhood, and it got broken up. So I had to pick up the torch for everybody that had gotten moved on. So, and then like you also know, we had those family of 6 kids down the street really looked up to us. And unfortunately, the way things are going now, they are losing their way. I went away for 4 months to teach the academy. I just got back, and one of the little kids the other day had a bag full of weed and toting a gun on him now. And I'm like, what happened to you? This wasn't you 4 months ago when I left. So now I got work to do.
Right. Yeah. David?
Yeah, I mean, similar as far as the growing up. That's the interesting thing about this particular show. But by and large, we're raised by my grandmother and my mother, both strong women, and both, very serious about us not sounding like and acting like a lot of the more hooligan, like guys and girls in our circles. They were big on, pronunciation, enunciation. My grandmother was, even though she didn't have that higher education, she was very, very serious about making sure that we represented in that way, and that, we had a spirit of excellence. But, God was also, as far as my personal walk, God blessed me with several mentors some of them more intentional than others, I guess. Some of them were like what Kyle was talking about, where there were people that I observed that I said, oh, okay, yeah, I kind of see how that's working for them. That's an interesting place for my mind to go as far as what I might be able to achieve if I apply some of the principles that they're talking about, et cetera. It worked or it didn't work. As Larry alluded to, the biggest influence probably in my life was martial arts. And I remember meeting my teacher, and I was like 10 or 11 years old, but he was an amazing, awesome sort of individual to me at that age. Even just the level of calm he had, which I didn't feel inside of me, but I could see it in him and was like, that's what I want to be like. And he allowed me to watch him, follow him, all that kind of thing. And man, he turned out to be the father I never had. And we had like an almost 50-year relationship until his recent passing this year that I'm still kind of wrestling with. But if you want to say a mentor in my life, he was clearly the most stable mentor in my life. And you talk about somebody who made you the man you are with regard to, principles, with regards to drive, with regards to the notion of perfecting a thing. This whole thing that Larry and I do about personal leadership, a lot of that from my perspective is rooted in all the things that I learned in punch goes this way, kick goes that way, type of wisdom. And so then what's interesting, just to bring the point on home, is as I get older and think that I am still the student, which I am, you look up one day and somebody is learning from you. And you didn't seek them out and say, hey, I'm mentoring people. Come here, boy, let me mentor you. You know what I mean? It's just one day you look up and you're doing it. You know what I mean? And so it's that part has been interesting to me too, to find people talking to me in the way and with the voice and with the questions and that kind of thing that I talked to my teacher for years. To find that somebody was talking to me like that. I was like, why are you talking to me? But I could tell them what I was told, what I was taught, and what I learned through getting the knowledge, but then trying to exercise the knowledge and failing, and then, succeeding in other places and learning how to put the suit on for me where it fit me, showing them how to tailor it for them. So it's just an interesting circle, and everything about how that comes around. And so, so that's a real thing, and a thing that we need more of, to Galen's point, so.
Most definitely. I just always felt like, without having a consistent father, who was, in and out. And so we was primarily raised by my mother and our grandmother. They could be mentors, and to a point, they was very, very good mentors on principle, because principles don't have genders attached to them. So they was very good at mentoring on principle. When we had to find that more sniper approach to maybe the male influence, we definitely were in the Scouts ourselves, and between the Scouts, different sports and things like that, we found mentors then, but we had to kind of subcontract mentors out, like
right.
So you signed up, you whether you're a mentor to us or not, So scouts and sports, and because it wasn't that plentiful, and if nothing else, we ran into a lot of people where we grew up, where we knew that that's where we did not want to be. And it was a different level of respect that seemed back when we was growing up in our neighborhood. The gangsters back then looked like they cared. It was like gangsters with hearts. If I saw myself going down the alley looking for something, and you see some guys out there shooting craps, they look at me and say, Chris, and that was my, everybody at home called me Chris, what you doing back here? Your mama killed you back here. and then us you back up front. You don't want to see none of this, because they don't want to get in trouble with my mother and my grandmother, But today they probably just snatch you in and don't care, have no code, no respect or anything, And so that was always a weird dynamic. We had gangsters with manners back then, so
It's true.
I think they respected that thing in you that looked like you were going somewhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Didn't want to impede that. They wanted to kind of support that. Whereas now it's less like that. I feel like
it's less like that. Unfortunately,
drag you down with them.
Back then it was we don't want this life for you.
No,
now they want you to be a foot soldier now. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't have you
represent the hood. Yeah, you're part of the brand now. Ride for the brand. So
exactly. Yeah, you might need to help me with my homework tomorrow, Chris. So I can't have you back in the streets. Right. And then I think my biggest mentor was the dad I wish I had. And I don't know if some of y'all might be too young for this watching this podcast, but the ones that there used to be this movie, this show came on TV called The Courtship of Eddie's Father.
Yeah, man.
And Bill Bixby, who later played the Incredible Hulk, he was a widow, and he was a widow, and
the hair on your face looking grayer all the
time. So anyway, look it up, kids. You can Google The Courtship of Eddie's Father, and I remember they had a maid named, and she used to call him, food is ready, Mr. Eddie's father. That's what she called him. But anyway, it always started out with him and his son Eddie walking along the beach or in the park, and he would answer these life questions, and then his dad would give him an answer, and then Eddie always had a clever way of summarizing in his kid's way, and then the song could come on, people, let me tell you about my best friend. Anyway, Google it. You'll see what I'm talking about. But I was like, man, if I had a dad like that, I could talk to without, without all the drama that my dad was bringing sometimes. Like, man, that'd be great, but never found that guy, So I tried to be that as much as I could to my sons and my kids, and tried to be some of that example. I got caught up in always trying to work real hard to give them the life that I wanted them to have. But I did want that, and it looks like now, even my son, my son Joshua and I, we hang out a lot. He asks me these life questions, and I'm just glad to be able to talk frank with him. And I got my master's. I didn't need to get it, but I got it from the same school that Josh was getting ready to start law school in August. And so he saw me do it, not get a law degree, but saw me graduate with a master's degree. And now he's getting ready to, elevate his game in his education as well. So just glad to see it all. The kids are, at this point, my oldest got a master's. My youngest daughter's in nursing school. Josh is getting ready to start law school, and Cortland is still trying to figure it out. He's Muay Thai master, so I guess he's gonna get a master's and whooping ass all his life. You got to be good at stuff. You need at least one ass whooping. So
got a bone breaker,
yeah. So it's somebody for everybody, But that mentorship is important, and I tried to transfer when I came on the fire department, and I didn't sign up to do it. I didn't say, ooh, you know what? Not only do I want to be a firefighter, I think I want to do some mentorship too. Yeah, that's the key. It just happened, and next thing you know, the Uncle Larry thing. I just got off the phone with a candidate on the captain's list the other day for 3 hours, just talking and giving advice and things like that. But I didn't call them and say, hey, you need some advice? People call, and I appreciate when they do. And I really try to make the time, because that's what they said. My mother used to say a long time ago, love a lot of times is spelled Time. And so when you do it the right way.
She was never good at spelling. I think she lost 2 or 3 of those spelling bees. So embarrassment to the family in that way. But she made a hell of a brisket, though.
Right. But seriously, But you gotta make time, because none of us have time. Everybody's rushing and doing stuff and on their phone. Even when you sit down with them, they on their phone, whatever. So you have to just put the phone down sometime and make time for people, because we just in a world where the news cycle, if it's not on TV, it's in your hand. If it ain't in your hand, it's in your head. If it ain't in your head, it's on your screen. It's just too much. So we have to make time, and mentorship requires that focus. So people, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, right? So that's the key with that. So we kind of covered a lot in that segment, because I wanted to talk about single mothers, but two things I wanted to cover that we probably got in common too is that we grew up with single mothers, so we kind of touched on that. We grew up in North St. Louis, so we touched on that. But we Dave and I had to go to church every Sunday. My grandmother, even my mother, my grandmother was like, "We going to church," and she would always have a bag full of peppermints in her purse, and and had to pinch you if you acted up and give you a peppermint to be quiet. It was magic in that peppermint, just made you quiet, to the end of church. But I know that's how we grew up in the church, and even though we didn't always understand what was going on, we were always involved in whatever the Christian Youth Fellowship and different aspects of it, and a lot of it stuck to help us make moral decisions that we make today. I know how David and I don't have to spend a lot of time mirroring each other's experiences on it. But you guys, the Taylor brothers, tell us about your upbringing and how that type of moral foundation still keeps you today, I guess. Faith, family, and firefighting. That's the faith.
I would like to. We were raised. So in our immediate home, my mother would go to church every now and then, but my grandmother toted all of her grandchildren to church every Sunday, without fail. We were in church. I had an opportunity yesterday, to go through the old neighborhood. I can't even remember what we went out there for originally. But so I had my son with me. I had to take him to an appointment. So we were driving through Richmond Heights, and I was able to take him. And I was also blessed and fortunate to baptize my son a few weeks ago, as kind of my last act when we were actually leaving Fort Novosel, Alabama. Of course, now we're in transition, headed over to Italy. But my last Sunday in the church where I was leading, my son is now 9, and we've been working on this for a while now. And so he came to that culminating point in decision where he decided to give his life to the Lord and be baptized. So I was able to take him by the church where I was originally baptized out in Richmond Heights, right there at the intersection of Hanley and Laclede. I'm sorry, Dale and Laclede. And that church just looked a lot smaller, I guess, driving past it yesterday. And we always try to reconcile it was where we went to church on Sunday mornings, but it was also the bus stop for where we actually had to catch the bus to school. And all the lessons we learned on Sunday is the next morning we'd have forgot all about it, because we cutting up and clowning and doing, all manner of stuff in front of the Lord's house that we had just been told the day before we ain't supposed to do. So I never quite figured that part out. But the faith was fundamental in our upbringing. My grandmother made sure that she raised us up, going to church and going to Bible camp every summer. So it was those two things. So I talked about our scoutmasters, I guess, being mentors, but I guess the first mentor we probably really had like that would have been Brother Ted, Theodore Jackson, who was a minister. He was a lay minister within the church, and he understood our circumstance. So he was very intentional about making sure he, the way he engaged my brother and I, you know what I mean? And we had enough of a moral foundation. And Lord knows I got into stuff. I'm going to just put that out there, especially when I got to my teens. But I always had something inside of me that it was like where it had to be a deliberate decision where I was making a choice to do this, because it wasn't like I didn't know better. I was just choosing to be something that I knew I was raised not to be. I went through a rebellious stage, but it was a deliberate decision. It wasn't because I was wayward and didn't know any better. And I think that, of course, There's a lot to be said about that, because it was something that foundation that was instilled in us. It did eventually. So when scripture says in Proverbs, about when you train a child up, in the way that they should go, when they come of age, essentially, they will not depart from it. I don't think it necessarily means it won't stray, but you will have enough of a foundation, to inform the way you choose to live your life and inform the kind of person you choose to be, that I think that you will recognize the benefit in being this other person. And I'm going to choose that over this. Like, I went this way, but I realized there's nothing in this and there's nothing to this. And it's much better to pursue this path, become this kind of person, because it'll give you the kind of outcomes you really want in life, as far as the kind of person you want to be, the kind of person you want to be perceived as by other people, the kind of person you want to be regarded as in your community. You know what I mean? So you rather choose to be that person, even if you chose to do something else first, to kind of explore and see, what's over there on the other side, because you were just kind of kept from it when you was younger. Well, let me go see what that's about then. Maybe it ain't as bad as they said. It's as bad as they said it was. Let me get back over here. Stuff makes sense, you know what I mean, and do like I know I was raised right. So
I never had that yearning.
I mean, quite honestly, I'll say this. That was my influence on my brother. I never let him get into that. If I'm skipping school, I'm literally walking out the front door telling him, take your behind back up in there. You don't follow me. You don't go where I'm going. Can I come? No, you're not coming with me. As I'm walking out the front door to school, like I ain't even sneak out. I'm probably talking too loud. You don't go tell that don't tell that to your cousins down there. But as I'm walking out the front door to school, I'm yelling back over my shoulder, no, you stay here. You don't follow where I'm going. Because I understood, like, it ain't like I didn't have aptitude and potential, but my brother didn't have that thing in him. You know what I mean? I think I heard something you said in your heart, David, that I had a lot of anger in me as a young man because of our circumstance, because of a father who never kept his promises. And I'm standing by the door with a bag waiting on a man to come get me, who maybe 1 out of 10 times. And it'll create an anger and a hurt and, that drives you through life. You know what I mean? It makes you become reckless in ways, and you think it's justified because of these things that you've experienced. But this fundamental principle that was cultivated in us, again, with the love for the Lord and the things of God, respect for the house of God and the people of God, it still kind of was the thing that kept me from just being all the way out there. There was a thing in my mind, like I toted a pistol. I never shot nobody, you know what I mean? Because in my mind, I knew, you know what I mean? That like, that's something that like I will become something other than what I know I was raised to be. And you can't come back from that. You know what I mean? I'll throw it over to you.
No, I knew those things. I knew those things about him, and that was kind of my example. Sometimes it was deliberate that he shielded me from the stuff that he was getting into, but other times, I just caught it on my own, and I knew, watching what he was doing and what these guys outside of our house were doing, that's not what I wanted. So I kind of dove myself into sports like year round, and that kept me occupied. I was in sports literally all year round. So I had no time to go outside and hang out. I had no time to go out in the neighborhood and get into trouble or be influenced by bad examples or anything. And then when I talked to him, he wasn't Kyle out on the streets. He was my older brother giving me, big brother advice. Like, hey, don't do that. Don't do that. Right. Stuff like that. So I was blessed in that aspect. So
now, Galen, after saying it, and that's very good because, a lot of what Kyle is saying, and I can relate. I mean, I went through my rebellious stage. My rebellious stage got me put out the house at 17. So, I mean, I've been on my own since I was 17. David, remember that historical moment when that happened. But, we go through what we go through. But it did give me a sense of, it really ramped up my personal leadership at that point, and that work ethic that I was taught by my grandmother and my mother growing up. Those things were contributions to the success I think I've had in the fire service. And also, I can relate to what Kyle was saying too, as far as like being intentional about some of the stuff, because you know better. I think it's really stopped me from going totally over the edge. And like in similar fashion, that was stuff I didn't reveal to David and Corey and my sisters growing up about, some stuff, because I was like, since I always felt like I was the oldest and a leader anyway, let me go let me go first and see, okay, this ain't good or whatever. And lucky I was able to make it back and then, make it back so I can at least drop some advice like you don't want to do that. And they were smart enough to know too what they should or shouldn't do. And except for our youngest brother, he was a gangster. He gonna do it anyway. So he just, we all say, you want somebody rubbed out, call Corey, because he's gonna handle it for you, but he's a productive citizen, as we speak. So we're really proud of that. But Galen, I wanted to also make sure that we don't lose sight. How do you take all of that discipline, that moral compass, that everything that was instilled in you, and how do you think that contribute to making you not only the firefighter you are, but people at the firehouse call Galen the mother hen, because he gonna make sure you taken care of. He gonna make sure that the bottom don't drop out. And if your bottom drops out around Galen, that's because you wanted it, and he just decided to let you go. But he ain't gonna let you go without a fight. And that was always a security thing for me as his captain, because I used to tell people, here's my few things I'm going to say. And the rest of the stuff you need to know about how we do things, you need to go talk to Galen. And Galen would, take care of business. So if there was a co-pilot, a lieutenant, Batman and Robin, we used to call it, it was going to be Galen. But it was mainly because he was very well rooted and grounded in his convictions. So how do you think that upbringing helped contribute being a great firefighter?
Oh, my very similar to your story, our mother and grandmother instilled very strong work ethic in us. Our mother, she was working multiple jobs. Our grandmother was working multiple jobs to make sure that we had at least what we needed. And that was for basics. You know what I'm saying? That was for basics. So for me now, being in that role, I work multiple jobs to make sure unfortunately, my kids have what they want. They always have what they need. but I try to reinforce that with like the discipline and everything that I was raised with. And as far as turning that to like people in the firehouse, our crew, my grandmother never let us lose. She always made sure we succeeded and saw whatever we were doing through to the end. So I feel the same way, just like you said, if you're going to fail, it's going to be because of you, not because you didn't have the right guidance or the right helping hand there. I'm going to be all that for you. As long as I see you trying, I'm going to help you try until we get you over that finish line. So that's very important to me.
If I can jump on this really quick. So I think that we had a unique circumstance too, as I think about it, because we were exposed to things that, like, even in our immediate circle, I realized how remarkable my grandmother and my mother were, because even though they had very limited resources, they made a whole lot out of a little, like in the way that they exposed us to things. Like other kids, we realized like they didn't go like to the planetarium, to the science center, to the St. Louis History Museum, all these free things that we got in St. Louis. They were very intentional about making sure we were taken to these things and made a culture, exposed to things that people on your block that I ain't never been there, you know what I mean? It's free, but planetarium. Right. Yeah. So, but making the most of the green spaces in Forest Park, the botanical garden, the planetarium, the science center, the zoo, and all the free things that we could do in the city. When we didn't have money, they made sure we was exposed to them. That's one thing. Another thing that they did is get us civic minded very early, because my grandmother was very civic minded. So we used to work like on campaigns and everything for the first Lacey Clay, for Lacey Clay Sr. And we used to go stumping and putting signs in yards and putting handbills in people. She got us invested in the community early, making us civic minded. And as a grown man, I look back on that, like what she was cultivating within us is that character where you don't have grandkids who grew up to be a burden to society. They make contributions to society because they understand what societal needs are. She made us conscious of things like that. Like when people make these kind of decisions, you got to look at the impacts of it, like on young people, on older people. You know what I mean? These programs, if they make these decisions, then Miss Marguerite might not be able to get, the Meals on Wheels that come to her house anymore. So that's why we got to vote for a guy like this, because we need people like this who are vulnerable in our community, that they will keep getting the services that they need. And this guy, if he's not elected, then those services won't be available to these people. And we was young being exposed to things like this, to begin to think like this. And amongst our peer group, I just realized that was like really remarkable. We was a part of, even though we didn't win, I think we won for a couple of years before eminent domain was exercised and they took over all them houses to build the Galleria. We was putting signs in. Now, a lot of them people was like, give me that money. I'm going to sell my house and show me where to sign. But we had a few holdouts, but they didn't win because the overwhelming majority of people said they wanted to sell for the highway and for the Galleria. But my grandmother fought to protect for those few people who wanted to hold out. You know what I mean? She was an advocate for them. We was exposed to those kind of things early. So it was like this awareness when you grow up that you're supposed to be a contributor to your society, not be a burden on your community and to society.
Now, I can relate. My grandmother worked the pole. I mean, at the polls.
We had to get through school some kind of way. Listen, don't judge me.
Coming to the stage, Miss Ethel, Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
But
The stage name E Nasty,
She worked at the poll, and she was a block president of the block unit. And when you talk about Lacey, his dad, William, I think, has been to our house for campaign meetings growing up because he knew my grandfather growing up. So it's funny that when you made that comment, I was like, man, we got it took a podcast to figure out how much more we got in common, But she believed in that community too. And even to this day, I'm president of my neighborhood association based on the spirit of my grandma. I cut my grass and she's still floating over, but like, you missed a spot. And I need to pull that grass up in the between the sidewalk by the root. By the roots. So be like, by the root, before they got weed eaters, they used to have the thing where you cut the grass with the little scissor thing.
Yeah, the little trimmers.
I got carpal tunnel still to this day doing that kind of madness because she wanted that grass cut like a haircut. I could have been a barber, like, man, you get down there, you missed a spot. I was like, man, but and then when we swept the front of our yard, we had to sweep next door
the alley.
The alley and
so there. Hey, when you cut this, you go cut Miss Rusan's yard, you go cut Miss Marguerite's yard. Hey, you get on there and you show, and don't you take a dime from her. If she offers you money, you refuse it. Shovel her walkway, put salt down there, that kind of thing.
Galen didn't mind, but when we was at the 13. Well, we had field day in the alley. We get to sweep, we bring out the booster, we wash down the whole alley, take care of the house next to us all the way down to the corner, and people look at us like we crazy. Me and Galen didn't mind, but we might get some people working with us talking about what we doing this for, because this is where we work, this is where we work, this is where we live a third of our lives. So we're going to, we had that it was instilled from obviously the similarities of our community-minded upbringing, Dave, I want to ask you, as far as we get off the family segment, how do you protect your children from what tried to destroy you and prepare them for the world, do you think?
That's a good question. It's scary. But so one of the things I kind of learned through some of the stuff we've been talking about, and through, Sensei was a minister himself, but he was also, sort of deeply rooted in that Bushido, and the notion that, at the risk of sounding like Kwai Chang King, the garden you tend to inside reflects on the outside. You know what I mean? So there's an real quick story about that Sensei told me years ago about a man who trained roosters. So this man brings him a rooster and said, I want you to train this rooster to be the most, fearsome fighter. They were fighting these roosters. And so he said, well, come back in 2 weeks And I should have him ready. So the man comes back in 2 weeks, and he said, well, is he ready? He said, I don't know. We'll see. So they put him out there in the ring against another rooster. And when the other rooster came out, this man's rooster ran back in right quick. So then he said, oh, shucks. Well, he's not ready. Come back in 2 more weeks. So he comes back in 2 more weeks. And when he come back in 2 more weeks and they put him back in the ring with another rooster, he runs across and tears the other rooster up. It's just, I mean, everybody was going, oh my God, that's horrible. Man says, great. Rooster's ready. He says, no, he's not ready yet. He says, come back in 2 more weeks. In 2 more weeks, he just killed the other rooster. He's ready. He's not ready. So come back in 2 more weeks. And this time they let him out and he just starts walking back and forth, but he's walking with a different kind of confidence. And the other rooster comes out and starts to charge him and then stops and looks and then turns around and goes back. And he says, now he's ready. So it's a thing where he says that how you train who you are on the inside. These days, when they're training these martial artists, you'll hear a lot of these MMA guys, these cage fighters who tear their bodies up, talking about there's no benefit in doing forms and katas and things that you see that are like promoting meditation and motion. And those things put you in a place. I didn't believe it when I was told it, but I've believed it since I've lived it, where the world doesn't even really come at you the same way it comes at other folks. People don't, when you walk into certain rooms, don't come at you the same way that they come at other people. And so my son in particular has been studying karate under me since he was 6 years old. He's a black belt now, but he's an artistic guy. He sings Frank Sinatra at the clubs and stuff. He's living in New York, and he's, you would think, well, if you described him on paper, somebody better take care of that guy. But run up on him, you have some problems. But he never gets anybody, knock on wood and praise God, running up on him. Instead, what he gets is a thing where he inspires people, but it's a thing that's coming from inside of him. It's not a thing that's outside that he has to put on something to do, which is kind of what we try to teach in the class. If you're coming in with a sort of leadership that says, I'm the boss, I'm the officer, I'm in charge, I'm the this, that people will do what you say because of the badge, maybe. But the respect you have is nothing. And so you become like that rooster that runs across and rips everything up. Everybody fears you, but nobody respects you. But if you then train where that leadership is on the inside and you have that strong moral upbringing we've been talking about, you have that sort of peace and stillness that, the katas and the soul centering and alignment sort of brings you, you'd be surprised at how much that goes before you and deters a lot of mess and craziness, but helps you to make, just even wiser decisions. Like the poem says, when you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, that whole thing. That's a poem called If. That was one of the things that made him memorize. So he could, be this thing. And the same, with my daughter, we tried to instill those things in them. My wife and I both raising them. And with that, they become sort of lights in the world. And part of that, I'm saying it because I'm their dad and I'm proud of them. But the other part of that is testimony that I hear from other people. Like they end up, like we all did, in leadership positions where you didn't really go to try and be a leader. And so you just end up being in those leadership positions because of the garden you cultivated inside that, is reflected on the outside. So that's my long-winded answer to that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, good stuff. Because all we can do is plant seeds. I know even when my kids have not done exactly what I've said and I've followed the exact path, I've had faith in the seeds I've planted. And I realize that seeds grow at different times. Every seed you plant don't grow right away. Some of them grow is biblical. Some of them grow right now. Some of them grow later. Some of them don't never grow. And so you got to just keep germinating, keep planting, have faith in the fact that they're going to grow. As we start to kind of wrap things up, I want to ask each one of you, as we were talking about, we were on this side looking for mentors, seeking out the guidance, so to speak. We were looking when we were getting it from our parents and they did the best they could. But when we were seeking it from more of a direct approach, from maybe from a male point of view or other aspects, as we found in the scouts and stuff like that. But and this is an oldie but goldie type of question, but I think is a very good question, no matter when you say it. Grown men looking back at our 18-year-old self, what would you tell, knowing what you were seeking at 18, and then knowing at our age now what we know, what would you tell them now to maybe help them not navigate through some of the bumps that, of course, made us stronger, made us better? There's a lot of things I wouldn't do. I wouldn't do different because I wouldn't have learned the lessons I've learned. But there are a few things I wish maybe I could have told myself and might have did things a little better and made the navigation a little easier. So let's kind of go around. We start with Galen and Kyle, then David. What would you tell your 18-year-old North St. Louis self now?
Don't give up. Don't give up on your dreams. Hold the course. What else? Don't give up. Hold the course. Believe in yourself and keep pushing forward.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I was on the north side, I'd say you better get back over in your hood. You better right. get back across page.
Mm-hmm,
get back to where you're
more dangerous.
First, you better take note of your surroundings if that's where I was, and get back on the west side. No. I would say that I'm really appreciating the more I hear David talking, especially about the disciplines, of course, that are cultivated through the martial arts. And, how he got his son exposed. And that was a way, to provide him a pathway. And then along with him being present in his life, though, so I can't imagine the amplified effect, of course, of what the benefit was for him that he discovered in martial arts, the calmness that it brought to you, help you learn how to extinguish the anger that burned because of you in a circumstance that you didn't choose for yourself, but you got to learn to make the most of it and learn to live within it and not allow it to consume you. But then to raise your son with like a little bit more, acquire the strength, because life don't have to be that way for him because you're present in his life. I think about that, of course, because my son is younger. My son is only 9. So hearing you say this, you know what I mean? And I'd always thought about getting him involved, but I mean, just the things that you shared, I realized like, not just to teach him, because Galen, so like one of the things you mentioned about, like your son don't give off that energy. Galen was like that growing up. People was testing me all the time, probably because I was light skinned. You know what I mean? I don't know what it was, but Galen just never gave off that kind of energy where he had to fight a lot. It seemed like I was fighting all the time growing up. So I don't know if that's going to be my son's testimony. Kids today, I don't know if they thought like that, but I want my son to be able to protect himself. But more important than that, just listening to what you said, like the discipline that it cultivates in his life, you know what I mean? Something he can wrap his life around, along with his faith, you know what I mean? A discipline he can wrap his life around has tremendous appeal to me. So I guess if I look back at my 18-year-old self, I guess I wish I would have found something like that, because I think that I would have learned to channel my focus and my energy a lot better, because I was kind of spastic. I was putting energy out all into the world and not in the most productive ways. You know what I mean? And so my pathway to being able to start succeeding was very circuitous. So I think that based on what you said and based on what I'm thinking, as I have an opportunity to do this with my own son, it's this principle that like once you make up in your mind what you are, you've also made up in your mind what you're not. Because if I say I'm this thing right here, then that means I'm absolutely not this thing over here, because I can't be both this and this. So if this is the kind of principled man I say I want to be, like I'll define this is what I want with my life, this is what I want to do with my life, then you guys talk about this self-leadership. Then there's some discipline that actually has to follow that. Or otherwise, you just got to be honest with yourself and say, you ain't about that life. You really, because that ain't like all the things you doing is taking you in a different direction than what you say you about. So once you define, and my 18-year-old self, once you make up in your mind what you are, you've also said no to a whole bunch of other things. And you got to maintain that focus so that, you know, it don't take you as long to figure this out. You know what I mean? In this whole self-discovery. And I don't regret none of it. You know what I mean? I think it's added, you know, perspective to my life, but I lost some time and some years that I would look at it like I wouldn't want my son to have to duplicate that. Like I would want his focus to be a little bit more singular so he can arrive on time, on target a lot earlier than I did. You know what I mean? So that once you define what you are, you've also defined what you're not. So once you say yes to this, you're saying no to this other stuff over here because that's a distraction. 100%. This is where you want to go.
Most definitely.
He said exactly 100%. What I did, but the long way.
What he said.
Yeah. What I would say to my 18-year-old self is I would say, David, leave that girl alone. No, she wasn't nothing but for real though. I would. So a lot of times you'll say stuff to a kid, and I'm saying this from the kid's perspective, but also from the person who has said it to the kid. And their ears will not hear you, but their soul will. And you hear it come back to you sometime from the kid, like somebody else told them. And you were the one who told them. And you say, I know I told you that. And you won't, you know. But what you spoke in their spirit is now they're reaching it. They're coming to it and coming out. And something that was said to me was, you're going to pay either way. Whatever you decide to do, you're going to pay either way. Kind of what you were saying, Kyle, about if you decide you're this thing, that means you give up a whole bunch of other things. But that works the other way too. So if you decide that you're going to compromise your principles and whatever, you're going to take the shorter road or whatever, you're going to pay. You think you'll get there faster. You think you'll get there better. You think you'll get where you're trying to go. But the cost of that later when you get to the cash register is going to be a trip. So you then say, well, maybe this other road is longer, a little harder, a little frustrating, whatever. But at the end of the day, I'll be in this place. So then you got to decide what you want to spend your spiritual currency on, what you want to spend your, you know what I mean? And so that's the thing I would tell my 18-year-old self. Be very, very wise and judicious about what you spend that spiritual currency on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, good stuff. I think I would tell my 18-year-old self, and David and I talk about this when we do our class. The first thing we start to talk about with the Empower model is envision. And, and I didn't really have a lot of it. Matter of fact, I got thrown into the streets based on, you know, how I got separated from my home. So it wasn't no envision, like how I'm going to survive. You know, I had to work at Popeye's Chicken and keep a roof over my head, you know, it is. So I'm worried about, I call working at Popeye's foul play. Anyway.
At least you didn't chicken out. That's the important thing.
No, I didn't chicken out. I never flew the coop. I just stayed the course. You know?
You had to wing it. You know what I mean? Yeah. I could do this all day.
Yeah,
I could do this all day.
But I stayed in touch with the family because I wanted to keep my siblings abreast of what was happening. I want to make sure they don't do what I do, so you can have a leg up.
And to think he winging all of this.
Right. Oh man.
Well, seriously, folks. But the end vision would have probably navigated me through doing things more efficiently, I think. And because there's a lot of steps you just don't have to waste in life. And there's a lot of steps I wasted. And I don't regret some of the decision, but I regret the wasted time and some of that. And so I'm just so I would tell my 18-year-old self, number one, you got to ground yourself and you ground yourself correctly in your faith, then I feel like then that, your steps will be ordered a lot better. There are a lot of people who were focused early. When I think about a lot of the civil rights, I was talking to my sister about this the other day, a lot of the civil rights leaders who died, they died young. I mean, when you talk about some of them were like 21, 19, they died young. Martin Luther King was only 39 when he died. Fred Hampton, when he got killed in Chicago, he was 21 years old. Jesse Jackson, I think he was 19 when MLK got shot. These people had some envision for your ass, for real. I'm just saying, when you think about it, because most of the people, I'm just trying to get my life together. I'm just trying to, they failure to lunch, ain't left home yet or whatever like that. A lot of people, and then, and there are countless other, young people that in other fights, other faiths, other races who made history as well. They made it young and they're in. So it's not impossible to have a end vision early. You think about, Tiger Woods' dad gave him the envision, but Tiger Woods been swinging them golf clubs since the Merv Griffin show back when he was 4 years old or whatever. And, and the envision has, made a name for him. So all I'm saying is that that envision, the sooner you can get it going, the better. And if you had a mentor who could tell you some tricks of the trade on how to stay to the course of their end vision, you can avoid a lot of unnecessary people. Everybody got their cross to bear, everybody got their path to walk, but some of the unnecessary stuff that you have to go through, I just think that life is too short to be going too many detours. Just get on that path and stay on that path and stay focused. And to what Kyle said earlier, when you focus on that end vision, you know what you are. So that automatically weeds out what you're not. And you just don't spend a lot of time trying to figure that out. And so that's why I would tell my 18-year-old self. I'll also, tell my 18-year-old self, don't get put out the house. But, hey,
you would have been too late because you got put out yourself.
Right. Yeah. but nonetheless, I think
18-year-old self will be looking back at you like, thanks.
Right.
About a year late,
what are you doing with your own apartment at 17? Come on, man. And then, back then, I thought, man, I got my own apartment. Then my best friend moved in with me, so we split the rent. My dad owned the building, so he let us live there. But we still had to pay him rent. But I'm thinking like, man, I ain't got no curfew. I had to work harder to keep the roof over my head. But what I didn't realize that the young ladies I was dating back then, they had rules because they had to go home to their mommy and daddy. And once their mommy and daddy found out I had my own apartment, it was like, you can't date him no more. you ain't going nobody else. He must be a derelict. He got his own place at 17. What the? He ain't got no end vision. Get put out the house. What kind of?
You see, you're going to pay either way.
I want you to grow up. I want you to marry you a fire chief. That's what I want you to marry. Somebody fire chief. And in the future, they might have a thing called a podcast. I want you to have a podcast host and a fire. This dude ain't that dude. He ain't that.
So, look at you now.
Right.
No, you guys went into a lot of detail about that stuff, and I know I just threw some words out. That stuff for me is what I felt like I did say to myself at 18, because believe it or not, like, I lost a lot of confidence in myself. I went away to college thinking that, I was going to be successful, make my grandma and my mama proud. I only made it through a few years of college playing football. And
but you were excelling in college, though. You were excelling in college. You were winning awards in college.
Well,
I shouldn't actually.
But I didn't finish. So I lost a lot. I deflated myself a lot with that when I found myself moving back home, starting over, essentially. Like, I guess it almost felt like I just graduated high school and now what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And then I knew I had to go to work because that's what my mom and my grandma instilled in me. I need to go to work. So that's exactly what I did. I found a job. I buried myself in it. It wasn't what I wanted to do, but it paid the bills. It took care of me and my girlfriend, soon to be my wife. So that's what I lost myself in. But I never lost focus on what it was that I wanted to do with my life. And I finally got myself there. You know, I didn't give up. I kept pushing forward, and I finally got myself there. It took me a little bit longer than I liked, but I ain't gonna
step on his lines, but I kept my foot in his behind in 2005 about that too. And I told him, I said, listen, you either pursue management in Applebee's or you do this other thing, because the space you in right now, you can't wait tables forever. If you say you want to be a firefighter, pursue this thing. So of course, you know, and I know that when he first tried to get on with the city, I think that like it was a test that you didn't pass or whatever. And so he said, well, somebody told me, but volunteer firefighters, like, well, that'll make you a more appealing candidate. So you get that experience. And then when you apply again, it'll show you already had experience. And sure enough, that's what happened. And he was able to land it. And it mattered to me because I knew that that's what he wanted to do his whole life from the time we was little, you know. From the time we were little, that's what he wanted to be, was a firefighter. So it's like, again, once you define what you are, you say no to working at Applebee's interminably, because that's not really where you want to be. So,
and that was a glorious day when I did exactly that. Yeah. Like he said, when you determine what you are, you also determine what you are not. And I walked out that door forever.
Yeah, so yeah.
Applebee was just an advertiser. That's all. Yeah.
It was a beautiful thing.
Oh my goodness!
I could do this all day.
All day.
That's why it's the number one show on fire engineering right now, because.
But I know not for me. You know what I mean?
I know we're about to wrap it up, but what one thing I would like to say on the mentoring piece, circling back, is that what I do very deliberately now is, like, a lot of things I know I mentioned, like I kind of learned by observing other people, because you didn't really have anybody making an intentional decision to invest in you. It was just things that kind of dropped along the way. I'm very intentional about what I do as a mentor now, you know, and some of them are very long-term relationships. I mean, even I got one of my guys, like he's up at Fort Leonard Wood and he found out I'm here. He just sent me this message. Can I come through just to sit down to lunch with you tomorrow? So I told him, come through. He's going to drive down from Fort Leonard Wood so we can get lunch here in St. Louis tomorrow. But so I don't waste their time. We going to define in the beginning what the relationship is going to be and where you're trying to go. And then we're going to look at every decision that you make in light of what you told me. And is this lined up with where you're trying to go? You know, I make sure that we get on that early. And we do life on life stuff, marriage, you know what I mean? Family, your role as a husband or father. We got 26 years in, so I can, or 25 as a married, but to kind of help them with that too. But I'm very intentional and very deliberate. I mean, and I don't know how far this podcast go, but especially when it comes to us, you know, especially when it comes to us. In the Army, I'm one of 11. There's only 11 full bird colonel African-American chaplains in the Army.
Wow.
Captain chaplains, African-American, we probably got maybe about 160 of them out there. So you got a population of 11 of us trying to do the best we can to mentor and cultivate, you know, the 160 to get them up through the ranks, you know what I mean, to become colonel one day too. And this is the first time in the history of the Army we've had 11 sitting African-American full bird colonel chaplains. So we stand arm in arm. We're kind of proud of that because we helped each other get here. Coming up through the ranks, we helped each other get here.
Right. No, congratulations on that, brother.
Yeah,
and
really.
It shows, you know, like I said, and we have to, you know, and with you guys in that unique position, I'm sure it's an iron sharpens iron type of relationship, you know, to maintain the excellence. And I used to tell Galen them all the time, you know, when we were at the 13th, we tried to really provide a family atmosphere, but atmosphere of excellence, and making sure that we did it not only good, but tried to do it right. You know, because there are a lot of people who do things just because somebody taught them. Don't mean they taught them the right way. But I thought it was kind of hypocritical for me to go learn all this stuff I learned nationally and go teach nationally, and then come back and not interject a lot of that in our culture, in our system. And it's got some pushback with that. But one thing I could say about your brother is that, you know, and Galen and I has always disagree with everything. You know, sometimes you got to open his mouth a little bit. And I have to give my famous line. everybody can't be the captain today, so I'm gonna do it, and then y'all knew that. You knew that meant, it's time to stand down.
But, borrow that line.
Yeah, you know it all too well, but my point is we was always pulling in the same direction in spirit, because we wanted the crew to be to be as good as it can be. And I felt like I had a secret weapon in having all this national influence that I can bring and keep us, on the cutting edge of doing it the best way we could. So it became the iron sharpens iron type of environment there as well. And then we had burn camp together and all. So there's a lot of things that we've been able to help each other with in this whole thing. So I appreciate that. And their friendship still strong today as family. I come over and the girls, Uncle Larry, and I still have trouble telling which twin is which, but nonetheless,
You're their main man. That's all that matters.
You're a main man, Uncle Larry, but seriously, so I'm just saying you create that, and the draw has probably been, we didn't know what we know now is that we have more in common than we thought, and we exuded that kind of commonality without even knowing every detail. We talked about a lot of stuff, but this is even more revealing on this podcast. To kind of wrap things up, I get some closing comments to kind of wrap things up and send our audience out with something that they can use, because to me it's all important. Your faith helps us do this extraordinary job of helping people we don't even know. We don't show up to people's house and say, hey, did that person cheat on the SATs? Yeah, okay, we're not going to get them. We go get everybody. We save everybody. We don't judge. We just do what we came to do. We serve. We put our life on the line for people we don't even know. So you got to have a lot of faith to do that. Family, if you got to have a strong family at home. And then, but that segues when you manage your family well at home, you're a major contributor to the family at the firehouse, because it is a family. David laughs all the time when I say, unlike your family at home, if I got to go get Q-tips from Walgreens, we all got to go get Q-tips, because we can't separate. We have to move as a unit. If you're at home, say, I'm going to go get Q-tips, they say, okay, grab me some maxi pads while you're there too. You'd be like, yeah, damn. Damn.
I'm all too familiar with that.
Get the Q-tips.
Right. Yeah. And they don't never have the right price on them. You're like, can we get a price check? What? You just scan it so I get out of there, and then, so that's family. And then firefighting, that's what we do. And whether your fire is physical, like Galen and I have done for years, or whether it's, the spiritual fights that you have to deal with, and the fights that my brother David and Galen's brother Kyle has to deal with. Firefighting it could be a thankless job, but when you tie it all together, I think it makes you a better firefighter. I think it makes you a better person. And I think it makes you, and I say it all the time, firefighters aren't these people from another planet. Firefighters are people. And if you develop great people, then you can influence having great firefighters. And that should be. And that's why I like to talk about stuff like this, because we got a whole lot of great podcasts and a lot of great literature talking about the art of fighting fires and the art of, go or no go, or the art of reading smoke, the art of a lot of things. But in order to get to that, we got to have a strong foundation. And to me, that's what this is all about, having faith, family, and firefighter kind of complement each other, so we can not only have quality lives during our career, but then in your post-career, who wants to say, "Ooh, got my first pension check"? Because it just, and a lot of people do, unfortunately. So we want to make sure that we address all of it, and then when we address all of it, we have better better outcomes. And you're saving people in that way too, because you're saving yourself and saving yourself for your family. And we can't save ourselves first, and we're not equipped to save anybody else, you know, in my humble opinion. So any parting words, gentlemen, as we wrap this episode up? That was my parting word.
I noticed, he said as we closed like twice, I figured he was doing that because we had, clergy on the call. That's why I said since we had clergy on the call, the black preacher always got 3 or 4 closings. And so as I closed, so I think he was doing, that was for you, Kyle. But no, I mean, all of this is a very important show, like a lot of them that we do. And so I think that it's good to hear all of the perspectives. It's good to know that but to hear it, that the circumstances under which you grew up and everything, you weren't just in this vacuum in that house, that there were others like you out there kind of being, raised the same way. And you can see why Larry and Galen would have found, this sort of kinship with each other without even knowing that this is why, you're the same kind of tree, you grow in the same kind of forest, So that part was interesting, but it's also encouraging to know that there are men like us out there trying to make, the world better with who we're raising. And who we're raising in our house, but also who we're raising through mentorship and, any advice that we're able to give and that we're consistently learning ourselves or whatever. And so the scariest thing is for you to be handed the mantle and say, you the master now. So how you gonna run the monastery, So it's a daunting and awesome task. But we've obviously been given strong roots. And so, feel good to have heard all of this today. It's really been a thing that's kind of edified my soul. So I appreciate all of y'all for real.
I'll say that I don't do as much looking back as I probably should. So I'm grateful for this invitation and being able to participate in this. I wish in many ways, I guess I'd have taken more time to reflect over the questions, because I guess I'm so forward focused, probably because I'm still just at a point in my career where I'm coming down on the downside, but I still got some things I'm trying to accomplish. So I'm not quite in a reflective of a mode, but things like this make me really have to take an inventory of how we got here. You know what I mean? And I don't take as much time to kind of think about that. And I should, be more reflective and introspective, I guess, in that regard. So I'm grateful for this opportunity to participate and kind of even synthesize a lot of my own thoughts after I hear your stories. You know what I mean? And I look at them and like the things we have in common and the things I guess that might be a little bit dissimilar, but synthesizing my own thoughts about my own journey. You know what I mean? In light of like you guys, it helps me even understand myself better as I'm listening to you guys share your stories. So I'm grateful, to have this opportunity to share this platform with you all and to have this kind of discussion, which I think is so, so important. So thanks again for the invite.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for being on, brother.
Kayla?
Yeah, for me,
well, that's all the time we have. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
And I would be okay with it. No, I feel like I do a lot of reflecting on my past and what road I took to get where I am. And it makes me very proud of exactly what I said, staying the course, following through, and being where I am today. And I think that's probably what keeps the fire in me lit the most, to reach back and pull others up to where I am, and then hope that makes a lasting effect on them to want to do the same for somebody else, Luckily, I've been able to see that in action and play out. So I think that'll be good for me going forward, and, you know, keeping my brother close to my side, you know, whenever I need him. I think all of that plays a major role in who I am today and where I am. And it'll also, like I said, keep me going to keep doing the same. You know, I always want to do what's right. And for me, I always feel like I'm out to make my mom and my grandma proud, you know, looking down at us like, you know, hey, I did that, you know. So that's what keeps me going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good motivation. Cool. We both had strong upbringings and strong parents, and did, as my mother would say, she did the best she could. So sound like your parents did the same thing. So, but hey, it's been great. I've enjoyed the stuff I thought I knew, learning some new stuff, and we should do something similar again one day and just kind of continue the conversation, you know, because I think. As old Betty Wright said, people want to hear about it, Betty. No. So, right. But just keep that conversation going, because you know, we can't get away from these foundational principles. And to me, I hate to sound like the old guy, you know, when you get the gray going on, you start sounding old. But you know, these kids today. But for the most part, I just think that. The reason you got so much anxiety these days is because people don't take that time to meditate on what they have. They don't reinforce those foundations. So when you do that, you find yourself just being tossed to and fro in the waves of life, and being tossed to and fro is just an anxiety-driven way to be. And I think when you learn how to get your rudder together, get your end vision, know where that lighthouse is, stay grounded, stay the course, and those kind of things, then you can have a better continence about yourself. You can be more aware. You can have a better quality relationships. You could be a better firefighter. You could be a better army person. You could be just better at whatever you choose to do. And without all of the distractions that we have going on today. So that's why I like to have discussions like these, because hopefully they help plant a seed in people that says, let me just take a beat. Let me just take a moment so I can make every step count. My mother got a thing called rest, replenish every step taken. And you just got to get that sleep in. You got to get that rest in. You got to get that meditation in. You got to touch and agree, because as firefighters, we keep losing our families. We keep losing our lives. We're taking our lives at record numbers. We're getting divorced at record numbers. We drinking, and we're doing all this other kind of stuff in excess, trying to mask their anxiety and their pain. And then on top of that, you don't sleep well, and you see all this death and destruction in what we do. That's a lot. That's just a lot. And you, like I say, you throw a anxiety-filled life on top of that. It's a recipe for disaster. So let's continue to have these grounding type of conversations, and so we can continue to help our brothers and sisters in the greatest job in the world continue to do it better, because they operate from a strong foundation. And that's my dedication moving forward, because I'm doing it myself, and I want to spread the good news in doing that. And I'm going to counseling myself, and I used to say, I ain't going no stupid counseling, just suck it up, buttercup, you know. And that's almost kind of what our parents taught, because that's what they had to do. They had time. You got kids, boys, you trying to navigate out the street. You ain't got time to be sitting there talking about, and then, you know, Janice at work really made me mad today. You know, anybody got time for that? I got to feed these kids, you know. So we gotta take it, get better with it. So anyway, thanks for listening. Thanks for support of the Larry Conley Radio Show. We're going to be back with another great topic and another great conversation, more great people. We eventually will see, maybe we'll get Kyle in from Italy one day. You can, you know,
for sure.
Have some Italian background or something.
That's right. Chef's kiss.
Yeah. You know, whatever they say.
We can definitely do that.
Yeah. It's just, so then maybe
Even better, I guess.
Put it on the calendar for next June.
Yeah, when Galen come over,
next June.
Yeah, when Galen come over, we can shoot it live from Garter Lake or something like that.
Oh yeah,
be a better computer anyway,
Yeah, but holler at your boy. I'm gonna have to make some arrangements for next June. I can do this, Come over and find me at Mamma Mia. So. But so hey, FDIC is coming up in April, and as soon as it's going to be, if you by the time this airs, it might be already Christmas in August for some of you. So there's been some great submissions. I've reviewed a bunch of great submissions, and man, it's going to be a great 2026 at FDIC in beautiful downtown Indianapolis, Indiana. So the reason I'm mentioning that, because start putting your money away now, so you can want me no excuse not.
Well, you look like you're looking right at me when you say that.
Yeah. Start putting,
again, he's looking at you again.
He's already done one thing this year, so I'm proud of him. So baby steps, what I'm saying. So it's all good. But yeah, put it in now and come out to the greatest family reunion in firefighting, in the firefighting world. So we'll talk to you later. Have a great, safe summer. And we'll see you on the next Larry Conley Radio Show. Good night.